The name's know-how. Gear. Know-how. What's going on, guys? I haven't really done a video like this before in the past, so if you're interested in this movie breakdown, make sure you hit that subscribe button and let me know down in the comments if it's something you want to see in the future, because as someone who uses firearms regularly and tests new stuff all the time and enjoys older military surplus type firearms, movies like the one we're about to discuss really intrigue me, and I'm always kind of keeping my eyes out while I watch the movie. What's exciting? What's new? What are they using? What are the bad guys using? What are the good guys using? Oh, wow, why is that guy doing that with a scope? That makes no sense. All right. Those kind of things really intrigue me, and I love to see any mistakes or any good ideas that come out of movies. So with that, without further ado, December 22nd, 1964, 60 years ago almost, right? So 60 years ago, James Bond 007, Goldfinger. What a classic. Just rewatched that movie last night, and I gotta say, honestly, it kind of holds up. It's a gritty James Bond through and through movie, and it's just kind of fun. You know, it's just under a couple hours long, about 19 years after World War II ended, so you can imagine what's about to happen is the bad guys all have Axis power German weapons for the most part, and then the good guys are all ally weapons, right? So you're looking at all these different types of firearms, and I own a lot of them, so we're going to show you them up close and personal, and then we can talk about a lot of the guns that we see throughout the movie as well.
Do you expect me to talk? No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
Now you think I would start with the Walther PPK, right? We'll talk about that soon, don't worry. Actually, we're going to start with the Luger P08. Yes, because the Luger is in a holster on a guard that is knocked out by James right after he uses a repelling grappling hook type firearm, right? But who really knows what that is? It's just kind of a made up prop. Probably they kind of launch it with air or whatever it is. But the first real firearm that we see is a Luger P08. This is a Luger P08 from World War II. This one's from 1940, so early on in the war. Made by the company Mauser. Has all the spicy symbols you'd expect at the time, all matching numbers, all matching parts. Most likely has lived its life in a holster throughout at least the war, because it is in impeccable shape. Nice wooden grips there. It has a slide on the back here for locking in a stock, as well as a lanyard loop on the back. Very interesting design. With those all matching numbers, you can even pop up the safety, which is down, and it even literally pops up a physical piece with a serial number on it to block the mechanism from actuating the actual firearm. Up is fire. It has a toggle system I'll show you in a second. Back slit use sight here. Front serrated blade right there. 8 rounds, 9mm, single stack. Has a follower you have to actually physically pull down with that spring, because otherwise it's not like a modern magazine. You can just kind of push the rounds in and slide them and go. These literally have to be pushed in nice, and the magazines can be very finicky. So you really want to make sure that the rounds are seated in there properly all the way back, because otherwise it is jam-o-matic potentially. Very neat. Insert the mag in the bottom like so. Make sure she's seated all the way in. Now, safety is off. Toggle up here. Pull it back and let it go hard, because if you just kind of limp wrist it into it, it's going to get caught on that round. At least that's what I've seen. So safety on, safety off. Here we go. Well, last round didn't go, but it's old. I don't shoot it very often, try to take care of it. It's a piece of history, right? So with that, you can kind of see the last round when the magazine is empty, toggle will lock back. And there you have it, the Luger P08. I found the round it got caught on. Now the Luger makes sense, bad guy gun, right? That's kind of the vibe. Like within 20 years of the end of the war, that was definitely something they're striving for. And then you're gonna see that sprinkled throughout the movie. Of course, the next gun you see is actually a Walther PPK, which is now famous for the James Bond series. I will say, we'll talk about his Beretta 25 ACP in a second, which isn't in this movie, but it's something to talk about. But the Walther PPK, it's in a holster. It's he has it under his arm on the left side here, and he hangs on a hook, and he goes and has a big fight scene with a bad guy. Bad guy reaches for PPK. Bad guy gets eliminated in a bathtub, and that actually is the last time you see a Walther PPK in this movie for the most part. I think there's little glimpses of it throughout, but he never really uses it, which is interesting. We're going to talk about that in a second. But let me go back to the fact that I actually don't have a Walther PPK because it is 380. It's really cool. In modern day, there's so many people who love it just because of the James Bond aspect of it. It's not a great handgun compared to a lot of the 380s on the market now. So it's really something I would pick up solely for James Bond. There's so many better options out there. And with that, Bond actually started with a Beretta 25 caliber, so 25 ACP. And there are a bunch of talks on what models were used early on before the Walther PPK came into play. I think it was like Dr. No or something, where it was the first movie that he switched over to a Walther PPK. But that Beretta 25 was probably a Beretta like 418 or something from early 1900s. It's something where I don't have that, but I do have something very similar. This is the Beretta Model 84F in 9 short, or 380 ACP as we know it today, 95 grains. Comes with a double stack magazine, 13 rounds, again of 380. So it's very small. It's very small. It's kind of little brother of the 92 FS series we know today, or the M9, right? And with that, it actually is a blowback design. You can kind of see the barrel is not tilted, right? It is a simple blowback design. Slide can be racked like so. A little bit of real estate up here to grab. Has that hammer that you can have locked back like that. And then if you flip up the safety, decocker, makes you dead trigger. And also can't rack the slide anymore. So now you can go and flip it down and you're back into that double action mode. Or rack the slide and a little bit better trigger, right? Pretty famous. Love a good 92 series, so 84F is also in my wheelhouse there. Kind of interesting, single dot, little notch rear sight, single dot blade up front. Rack the slide there. And you know what, we'll decock it. Go into double action the first shot. Let's see how she goes. Not too bad for getting your pinky all the way on there, so it should be a good little handle there to fire it. There you go. Nope. Didn't lock back that time, but that's okay. You know, it's interesting though, it's a blowback design. I mean, did okay, right? But it's snappier than modern handguns. It really is. It's kind of a snappy handgun, and you know, it's kind of interesting feel to it when you fire it, but still very famous. Now enter Q Labs, right? Q's laboratory, where you have all the fun guns and gadgets. In fact, you see someone testing with an MP40, which of course I don't have, but again, bad guy guns, right? It's funny, they have those to test on a good guy wearing body armor. So it was kind of interesting to see. And on the back is a gun wall. So I'll show you a bunch of the guns that I own that are on that gun wall. And there's a whole bunch of revolvers. There's an Enfield, M1 Garand, M1 Carbine, MP40, P08, the Luger makes an appearance again. There's a bunch of guns on that back wall if you take a look at that scene, and a bunch of prop guns most likely, but he does use the MP40 to light up body armor, which I thought was kind of interesting. So let me show you real quick some of the guns that I have from that wall, and you'll also see these again later on at the Fort Knox scene. This is an M1 Garand, made famous from World War II. This one's a 1944 Springfield, has a brand new CMP stock, has been refinished from CMP, but we won the war and a lot of the M1 Grands were sent back to the arsenal to be refinished. Saw service in World War II and then a little bit beyond. Now it does have an 8-round clip. That's right, 8-round clip of 30-06, 150 grain, made specifically for the M1 Garand. Now, how this works is, you can kind of see up here, you have a charging handle right here, essentially, right? Charge the weapon, it pulls back the bolt, and then it locks with this tiny little lifter here, all right? So with that lifter, you can insert your clip, and what you want to do is line it up. You want to put your fingers down like so, because you don't want to get grand thumb, as they call it, not just the YouTuber. Push the clip all the way in to hear click, and you're going to see that the bolt now can freely be moved. Sometimes you got to get a little bump like that. And then you safely have loaded your M1 Garand. Now, you can also go and push this side button on here, right here. And when you pull this back, push that button, the whole clip, all the rounds will fall out, which is also a very useful thing for safety. Let's see how she runs. Has a front sight, very reminiscent of modern day ARs. Rear sight is a little tiny peephole with full adjustment on the back here, which is really nice. Safety is down here, right here, so you can actually go and flip it back, and then you have a safety now that you have to flip forward. So you know the safety's on because there's actually something kind of blocking your finger from getting in to the trigger area, to that trigger guard. Such a cool rifle. And that famous ping. This is a British Enfield rifle. Specifically, this is a number 4 Mark 1. There are a bunch of varieties of this particular rifle. It was kind of like the M1 Garand of the British Empire, right? This thing is seen all different variations all over the world. This one in particular is from 1944, made by the Maltby factory, has seen better days and has some insane character to it, which I love to see. Who knows what this saw? In fact, literally saw a saw at some point. There's like a saw mark on the top, and I'm like, what were you doing? Like in the woods there and dodging bullets from the Germans and just hit some firewood and hit right through and hit your rifle? I don't know, who knows, right? So it's just kind of interesting to kind of think about what the stories that these rifles could tell. And it's from 1944. So with that height of the war, this one is all kind of, the numbers are really crudely done. Everything's kind of thrown together, swole marks, factory marks, all of that. And it's really just got some good character to it. Now, what's also cool about it is it's with all the Enfields, there's a button here that you push and it can release this box magazine. So it's not an internal magazine, kind of like the M1 Garand, right? There's an external magazine that can be released. 10 rounds, 303 Brit, and I'll show you that in a second. 303 British, 174 grain. But they didn't issue 10 of these and said, here's 100 rounds ready to go. No, they issued you charger clips or strip clips, right? I'll show you that here, right here. And it holds 10 rounds, so here's 5 of them, and you stagger them on the back. See how you stagger the backs of the rounds there? It's kind of hard to see, but that's how you can kind of make it more efficient to load. Also, charging the weapon, right? So cock on open versus cock on closed. Normally, you flip this up. Look, there's no spring pressure there. Normally, you flip this up, goes back, and then it's cocked, right? This one flips back, and you cock it when you get to this point when you close it. And you can kind of see you're pushing a spring now. Whereas before, normally a bolt would just go fly right back, you're ready to go. Flipped opposite of normal rifles, right? Even modern hunting rifles. So such a cool gun. Has a safety on the back here where if you flip it back, you know, because you put your finger up here, this is kind of in the way where your thumb would go, and you can literally hear it. It's literally moving a mechanism out of the way to ready the weapon. Peep sight does have a flip up larger circle, smaller circle. Pretty cool. I like the larger circle overall. And then has the front blade right up top here, kind of protected a little bit. Really neat design. And this is seen action and variations all over the world, which is kind of cool to see. So it's just kind of a neat piece of history from the British Empire. Take a clip, slide it right in like so. There's a spot for it. Grab your finger, your thumb, hold that top round up a little bit, because you're going to glide these in. All right. Now you can take this out, put another one in, or for me, because these rounds are getting more rare and more expensive by the day, as is the rifles, all mill surpluses, you can now kind of do a little ping. That drops, you have a loaded Enfield ready to go. And you can also see British troops learn to fire this really quickly by flicking it up, going back forward, and just using one of their two fingers here to really go and fire, 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 fire. Like, it's a fast volley of fire if you want to practice that. The M1 Carbine, made famous in World War II, especially in the Pacific. This one was pretty much all made by quality hardware in the spring of 1944 with an underwood barrel. That is very common for M1 carbines. Bunch of different companies were making them, even like IBM was making M1 carbines, and different companies were making barrels, receivers, stocks, what have you. Slapped on a pistol mag pouch, actually, which was seen occasionally thrown on the stock of these. So now you have 3 15-round magazines. That's right, magazines, which is pretty cool. 30 carbine, 110 grain. So it's really like a spicy pistol round, maybe more like a modern day PCC really of the day. Very small, very lightweight, a lot of fun. Has a rear peep sight adjustable there, front winged blade up front there, bayonet lug on there as well. Magazine release right there. Click it in. Now the safety, you flip forward for safe, and now you cannot fire it. Trigger's locked up. Flip it back, so really you can kind of feel with your finger, which is interesting. Usually it's like kind of flipped where there's something blocking the trigger guard, right? But you can kind of feel with the trigger near the trigger right in front of it that it's ready to go. Lock it in, pull back on your charging handle here, kind of see the rounds right there. They get picked up, and you are ready to go. Tilly joins the ensemble, right? And she's trying to eliminate Goldfinger on a hilltop looking down. Goldfinger's like buying oranges or whatever he was doing there on the corner there. And Bond's up there. She misses, almost hits Bond. And she's using an ArmaLite AR7 with a scope on it. And I thought it was fascinating because the ArmaLite AR7 is a 22 long rifle, 8-round, tiny little thing that's designed to be taken apart, and they actually show the case later on, and James mentions, oh, my hunting case. Just like, the hunting case, 22 long rifle. I guess they're hunting some squirrels, serious squirrels in the Alps there, wherever they were, right? So with that, the AR7 was an interesting choice for that, but I think it's just kind of a cool looking, at the time, futuristic looking gun, and it's something that's actually still around today. There's several variants of it. In a way, it's like it's a survival rifle, really. It's not really designed to be long range or a scoped hunting rifle like that, being 22, but that was kind of neat. I don't own one, but there are some survival variants of that out there, which could be kind of cool to have. They're all 22. You can store all sorts of mags and things like that, and like the buttstock and all that. So that was kind of neat to see that AR7. Now you would think James would use the Walther PPK in any of the car chases, in any of the scenes where he's going after the bad guys. Oh, no, no, no. He pulls out in the first wreck he does with his car when he's faced with a bunch of the bad guys. He goes and pulls out a Walther P08, right? So a Walther P08, the bad guys have those as well. And the bad guys also have Smith & Wesson like Model 10 revolvers. There's actually several variants of revolvers that the bad guys run throughout the entire show or throughout the entire movie. And with that Walther P08 shows up several times, even after he busts out of his jail cell at the horse racing area and all that. So with that, it's just kind of neat to see that they have that and actually have one from that time period. So let me show you. This is the P38. Now this one's made by Mauser. Walther made them as well. And this one is from 1944. So late in the war, a little bit beat up. in terms of use. Has some swirl marks and kind of some poor machining characteristics, but that is kind of a rush production end of war and then post-war use of this particular handgun. Famous bad guy gun. I think this one has a new barrel, probably because it was thrown into maybe police use after the war ended. Has all the spicy marks that you would definitely expect from the 1940s, used in the military over in Germany, right? Single stack 9mm, 8 rounds, and unlike the Luger P08, this one has 8 rounds. There's more of a kind of a more modern magazine, no pull tab, something where you can kind of see now you push the rounds in fairly easily, and it runs really, really nicely. So how you load it has a nice thick plastic grips here. Load it like so. Has this magazine tab on the bottom right here, and funny enough, forgot to mention, this magazine, Walther mag, it's not an original Mauser mag. That's the one that came with this, right? So you can kind of see all the history of the P38. Famous bad guy gun. Obviously, it has a slide release, so again, kind of more famous now. Hammer fired handgun, or at least a slide there. Has a fire safety with a decocker, which is interesting. So once you decock it, flip it back into fire, you now have a double action trigger, and then it goes and locks the hammer back, and you can go into single action. U-notch in the back here, a little bit bigger than the Luger P08, and then nice blade up front, no serrations. Again, I think they kind of threw the niceties off there. Very historical, really cool piece of military history. There's that double action, which is smooth, really. Funny scene though, he's driving through like the bad guy's base, right? Where they're melting all these car parts from all the car that was made of gold and all the metal parts that were melting down. That's how they're smuggling in the gold. And with that, he's driving through this whole place after on the run with these bad guys. And this old lady comes out of nowhere, out of this like cabin near the entrance, it looks like, with an MP40 and just has like a blast, just lighting up the whole street. I thought that was kind of funny. So there's another MP40, you know, bad guy gun showing up again and just holding it, hip firing at the waist, you know. It was just funny that was in there. And those are obviously very expensive in real life. But there are some new manufacturers making MP40s that are semi-automatic you can buy, as well as like a reproduction, which is kind of neat. Odd Job, which is a famous character, right? In fact, we used to be able to play him in various video games. So like back in GoldenEye, right? 007 GoldenEye on the N64, they had Odd Job, and he had his famous hat with that steel ring around there, all sharpened. And that's in the end how, spoiler alert by the way, that's in the end what gets him when Bond rolls over there and electrocutes him on the whole jail cell, the jail cell, but the gates that are blocking, protecting all the gold there. And it's funny, he has the hat, which is cool, but he also has an M19A1 45 ACP suppressed that he takes out one of the kingpins there who are investing in this whole thing, and Goldfinger gives him a bunch of gold, and then Odd Job's supposed to take him to the airport. And he just turns around and hits him with a 45 ACP suppressed, and it was really neat because I have one of those from that time period from World War II. Take a look. The M1911A1 has seen use since World War I. This one was made in the spring of 1944. It's a Remington Rand made in Syracuse, New York. 7 rounds, 45 ACP, 230 grains, single stack magazine, fairly simple to load. This design has been around a long time, still utilized today. Let me show you the round compared to the 9mm. So check that out, 9mm, 115 grain, and then 45 ACP, 230 grain. You can kind of see the difference there, and that also attributes to how the handgun was designed, and they want to make sure they can fit those rounds that are much bigger into that magazine, and that's why you get less capacity as well, especially for the time period for World War II. A very interesting grip safety on the back, so that means you have to actually grip the handgun in a decent amount to make sure that it's ready to fire. Take your mag, insert your mag in the bottom, make sure she clicks in there, nice and flush there. And of course, there's different sizes for mags nowadays, but that's what we have, 7-round flush mag from back in the day there. Now, you can do either the slide release right here, or you can simply rack that slide like so. There is a safety on here, and you have to rack the slide in order to ready the firearm, because it doesn't have any kind of double action trigger or anything like that. It is a single action, rack the slide, ready to go. Now you have a cocked and locked, which is also famous for this particular design, where you flip up the safety and you cannot manipulate the slide, you cannot pull the trigger. It's locked and safe. Now when you're ready to fire, you simply swipe your thumb down and you're ready to go. Sights, little notch in the back here, very small blade in the front. Not ideal, but it worked, apparently, right? Revolvers were a big deal even back then. Like the 1911, it wasn't new, but it was still considered new, fancy, civilian technology, right? It's something where it wasn't available for everyone. A lot of people didn't carry them. A lot of police forces didn't carry them. In fact, the Colt official police 38 special revolver would have been more specifically designed for police carry. That Smith & Wesson you see all the time, the Model 10, all those 38s, and there's even some other ones like those old other police specials that are like in a different caliber. Okay. The 1911 wasn't really that popular for civilians or police, really. It was still, it's military. It wasn't really kind of merging over. You could still get them, and they're kind of expensive, but the revolver is mentioned throughout the entire movie, actually, and seen throughout the movie from good guys and bad guys. And the revolvers are usually like a Colt official police or a Smith & Wesson Model 10. There's various revolvers being used throughout the movie. And in fact, Goldfinger in the end busts out a Colt official police and 38 special, all plated in gold, the first golden gun, right? And you've seen several variations of golden guns throughout the series of James Bond, but that one came out. I don't have one. I have a couple of like snub nose revolvers and things like that, but I don't have any of the officials. I did used to have an old police revolver like that. I didn't have it. The wife's dad, he had it, and it was kind of neat to just kind of see that there was an old desk gun that was just kind of sitting there, and I don't think it was 38 special. I think it was 38 Smith & Wesson, which is a totally different round than 38 special, and it's not even being made much anymore. But that was a really cool, fascinating gun. And all those guns, they look, they don't have the modern grips on them, real thin revolver grips from back then, 5-shot, 6-shot, depending on which one you had, nice long barrels. And I remember hearing some stories back and forth on, they were thinking about getting James a revolver early on in the series, just because it's a simple thing, and they're like, oh, you can get, cut the barrel down real short, and it's a spy gun, right? Espionage and whatnot. And of course, like I said, he went from Beretta to Walther PPK anyways. It's kind of cool though. Goldfinger has a gold-plated Colt official police. The Thompson shows up in the end in Fort Knox. I don't have one of those. They really don't make them very much anymore. They're not, at least not the official Thompson. A lot of them made by like Auto Ordnance, which are like reproductions. The M1928A1 and M1928 with the drum both make appearances in the end of the movie there, with they're in the Fort Knox. A lot of the US GIs have those. And funny enough, they also have a Sterling like Mark IV, which is another machine gun kind of reminiscent of an old Sten gun, really, from the Brits there. It's kind of interesting how that was also thrown in there as well from the Park Department. And we talked about the M1 Garand, we talked about the M1 Carbine as well already, but the M14 was very prevalent at that time. The M14 is, the newer rendition of the M1 Garand, as it were, with that box magazine. I don't have one of those either, but it was kind of neat to see. And like I said, they always had the M1 Carbine, M1 Garand as well, mixed in with the troops. And that was kind of neat to throw in there. Car 98K was widely used by the bad guys in this movie. Once again, World War II, German weapons, the bad guy gun, right? So they use the Car 98K, MP40s, and they even, like I said, Smith & Wesson revolvers, Colt revolvers, and then of course the Walther P08. I didn't see Luger too much after that first scene, but that P38 was prevalent throughout most of the movie for the bad guys, and of course James picking that up. There's a Browning M2 chilling in the vault, like that first garage that they bust open, that first door they rip down. There's an M2 chilling there, like facing out, like it would have been a security measure where they can jump on that, which I thought was interesting. It was never used. It was just like one quick pass, but that was kind of cool. Obviously, I do not have one of those, but that would have been cool to have. One more quick gun wall that I almost forgot about. Browning high power. There's a Browning high power in a similar setup that I actually have now. Mine, of course, is 30 years newer than that one ever was probably, but or more. With that, there's a Browning high power on the back wall in that gun wall in Q Labs, and I have one to show you. This is a Browning high power made by FN. This one was made in the 80s for the Israeli police and military use. I'm not really sure, but this one is really interesting. It's kind of beat up and kind of used over the years, holster wear, things like that. And also it is a World War II handgun, which is also fascinating because you get a 13 round double stack 9mm magazine. This one's actually 15 rounds from a more modern production from Mekgar, but 13 rounds back then in the 1940s was very impressive. It's very reminiscent of a 1911 where you actually have to rack the slide to actually go and get that hammer cocked, and then it has a safety that you can lock, so you can do like a cocked and locked, like a 1911. Some quirks to it. One thing is modern grip. You kind of keep your thumbs up and kind of get a real good grip and high grip as much as you can on the handgun. Well, this bar here with the slide stop, slide release actually kind of gets in the way of that. You really kind of have to watch where you put your thumb because you don't want to accidentally lock the slide back when you don't want it to be locked back. Decent trigger, does have a magazine disconnect on there. It kind of messes it up a little bit, but that's kind of a European safety thing from back then. Slider release. There is no decocker, simply a safety to lock or swipe down to unlock. Back notch sight has been dropped a few times, it looks like, kind of beat up a little bit. Front dot, or what was a dot, I guess, at some point. Both are fixed, doesn't look like you can do much to them really. Possibly drift out the right, but honestly it looks pretty standard. I mean, really cool looking handgun, really historical. And it kind of holds up today, really, and kind of how it's designed. In fact, FN is still making these today. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, or if you want to see more of these, or give me some ideas on movies to review and talk about, hit them down in the comments below. I'll be happy to answer them. As always, train hard. You never know what's coming. Take care of the ones you love. Those are the ones that matter. And we'll see you in the next review.